right, hello everyone. Doug here with the LincolnList.com, and I want to welcome you to a very special 25th episode of Happy Hour with the Lincoln. And before your very eyes is all of the libations I have consumed since we began this gig. Now, I'm not sure if I should be impressed or embarrassed, maybe a little bit of both. And I hope throughout these 25 episodes that you've learned something and you found it entertaining and you liked it, because my internal organs have had to disperse of all of these toxins for your entertainment. So at least hope you learned something. But anyway, on tap, we got some good stuff we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about a couple of these different whiskeys, and I'm going to really focus in on the journey, because even though it's only 25 episodes, there's a lot of stuff in here I never would have tried if we wouldn't have done this happy hour. So there's some that, like all of life's journeys, that have surprised me. Some have lived up to their expectations. Some have been disappointments. But overall, if I never would have done this, I never would have had a chance to taste some of these whiskeys. So let's just get into it. When I was thinking back, which one of these whiskeys would I like to try again? And I'm going to go with the one I have here in the middle, which is by far the most expensive one, which is the 25-year Brewed Lodge. If you can remember this, I think we did this one on I think it was episode 3 or 4, I can't remember. But back then, we wanted to do Happy Hour live, and we did it on Periscope, and it was all just like a bomb. The video was shuttered, it was delayed, and I never really got a fair shake at it. And since then, as you can tell, I have not had a drink of it. So with all that going on, I just kind of overlooked taste testing this thing. So when you're going to do your 25th, you might as well break out the good stuff. No sense in going the cheap route. So get a little whiff of that. Also, one of the interesting things about whiskeys, for those that don't know much about them, is that once you open them and they sit for a little while at room temperature, the ingredients start to work in a different way. So that's one of the interesting things about whiskey, is that when you open it up for the first time, it has a certain taste to it. And then if you go back to it 6 months later or a year later, it'll taste completely different. You'll taste some of the flavors, they'll come out even stronger. Some of the flavors will not be as present as they were the first time. So we're going to give this thing another go. And as I can smell it just from, I forget what I said the first time. I'd have to go back and, this almost has like a very, like a wine smell to it, where you're smelling a fruit. And I don't think I smelled that the very first time that I tasted it. And even though it's an Islay brand with Brewed Lodge, it's not a very smoky blend of whiskey. So let's give it another shot. I hope I don't drop it. I got all the good stuff here in the back. So I'm going to hold it up there. It's a pretty clear color, not as dark as some of the others, but aged 25 years for a very special 25th anniversary. Cheers to all of you who have stuck with me through this journey and put up with some of my rants. Let's drink. Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is really, really good. Not only that, it's exceptionally smooth. Again, I don't really remember what it was like. I think this would be probably October of last year is when I tested this the first time. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what it was like then, but this is so smooth, and you can just tell the difference of a whiskey like this. We talked about that with the Octomore. These higher end whiskeys, you know, you pay for what you get. There's some whiskeys that are very, very expensive that don't live up to the hype. But then there's these kind of whiskeys here where they're more than you expect. And you can definitely tell the differences between the price and the way the ingredients work and the smooth texture and the taste. So this is really, really good stuff. And as I said, I do remember in the first time I did that happy hour, I did say, I hope you live long enough in your life, or it leads you to a journey where someone shares a bottle of this whiskey with you, and I still stand by that statement. If you were here, I'd gladly share some of this with you. If you ever come and visit me in San Diego, I will gladly share this with you. But I do hope you get a chance to sample something of this level in your life. Let me have another one. Oh. Yeah, that's really good stuff. So, here's what I want to talk about. Since we're on our 25th, this is a good time to discuss the topic about life as a journey. You know, when you start a journey such as trading or a business or anything that you start out in life, you go through this journey, and part of enjoying that, part of reaching that goal of success or whatever that it is that you're out to achieve, is the journey along the way, is the ups and downs, is the good and the bad. It's the experience that makes life worth living. And as I had noted too at the very beginning, when I started Happy Hour, I lived in like a Scotch bubble, and most specifically a Isle of Islay Scotch bubble. That is all of the whiskeys that I really drank, occasionally a bourbon here and there. But for the most part, it was those smoky scotches from the Isle of Islay. And of course, there's only so many of those. We did those at the very intro. We did Port Charlotte, which is actually not in this mix. I must have thrown that bottle away. We did Ardbeg, which I think is down here. We've done most of the ones in that island, Octomore here as well. But if it wasn't for this little gig here that I was doing, I never would have got a chance to try some of these other whiskeys. So my point is, there are some that really surprised me that I never would have given a second thought to ever trying. And one of those I would think would be, let's say, Jameson's here. Now, I had Jameson's one time, I think it was years ago at a party, but I never would have gone back to Irish whiskey. And this was actually a pretty good whiskey for what it is. Like I said, I think you get this for $25 to $30 a bottle. Every restaurant has it. It's a very prevalent whiskey, but it's pretty good for what it is. I was really impressed with Jameson. Now, even if they get cheap, there's these whiskeys that have an addictive taste, and one I did recently is Spicebox. I think this was the last one that we did. I've never been a fan of flavored whiskeys. And I made fun of the Dewar's Honey, which I think is down there somewhere. And Cold Cock Whiskey, which is right over here, I think it is. This one had a herbal taste to it and some kind of ginseng, I think, or something in it. But this was a spiced whiskey. It just had an addictive taste. It was really sweet. And I could see this being some sort of a dessert whiskey or a whiskey that you would put into a tea. I don't know if I would just sit there and drink it straight, but, you know, it wasn't bad. For a cheap whiskey, which this is going to be probably $18 to $20 for one of these bigger 750 mils. You know, it's not, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was surprising for the cheapest of the cheap whiskey. Now, of course, on the high end here, my very favorite would be the Octomore. It's always been my favorite from the moment I've tasted it. I haven't had every single edition of these Octomores, but with the extra peat, the smoky flavor, the rich taste of this, I just love this whiskey. It's naturally going to be my favorite, and I'm going to be biased. Now, as far as some others that I didn't, I was also impressed with this peat monster here. This I thought was just going to be an ungodly amount of peat, and that's all that you were ever going to taste. It would not have any kind of alcohol flavor to it. But surprisingly, it did. It was a pretty good balance, even though it's a very clear whiskey. You can see it. I thought it would be watered down, but it wasn't. It had a pretty good taste to it as well, so I was impressed with this one. And also Talisker Storm. I figure I would be somewhat impressed with Talisker Storm because I like Talisker 10, but I've never had Talisker Storm. And even though it tones down some of the peat and it's a different type of whiskey than the Talisker 10, I was pretty impressed with that. And I think overall maybe one last one here to yodel about would be the Jura. I would never have gotten this. I just noticed it was off when I mentioned the story about this one when I was over at the Isle of Islay. I wanted to try it because it was the island next door, but I never made it over there. And I just didn't know if I'd ever get a chance to try it. It wasn't something that I was thinking about. I had other whiskeys that were in my mind. But nonetheless, when I tasted it, it was a good balance between something like a Speyside and an Isle of Islay with a little smoke. So it was these, I think, right here were a little bit more, this whiskey's right here, a little bit better than what I expected. I won't give you the ideas of the ones that disappointed me. I think you know them. I mean, they all have their place, their time, and their place. So that's my thoughts about these whiskeys. This is also what we're saying here is life itself is a journey. There will be things along the way that will surprise you, that you didn't expect to be surprised by, like these whiskeys right here. You didn't expect to have life give that to you. And then there's other things that you expect will be very good in your life, and they'll turn out to be a complete disappointment, like some of these other whiskeys, mainly the ones down over here in this little area right here. And of course, there will be things that will live up to their expectations and far exceed their expectations, like these two expensive bottles living up to their taste. So remember that as you're going through life, you will have good times and bad times, whether you are becoming a stock trader for the first time or experiencing your stock trader life, you're starting a business, you're starting a relationship, you're buying a new home for the first time, or you're just embarking on an endeavor for the very first time, and there's this goal that's far, far away. What you need to relish about it is all that journey. So when I start looking about my life right now as a trader, I remember all the way back to 1999 when I started. I remember those tough years. I remember trading in the back of a bike store. I remember meeting traders along the way and meeting influential people that just aren't related to the trading business. So just influential people that helped me one way or the other. And I remember the good times that I have. And then I remember also the bad times. You know, every time I have a good time, I say, oh, this is great. But I'd still remember where I came from. I still remember trading in that bike store. I still remember breaking computers. I still remember blowing up accounts. Now I remember helping people go through that same thing. I see traders come into our trade room and we're helping them. We're teaching them how to trade, and they're going through those same emotions. They're starting out losing money, then getting better, and then building upon that, then feeding their family, then taking care of themselves, and achieving their goals, and then increasing those goals step by step. So when I look back now, as I said before, I'm going on my 17th year of trading, I think about all of that journey. And sure, there's things I wish I could take back and things I could do different, but all of that makes us who we are. Those trials, those tribulations, all of that stuff in life, that's what makes it so exciting. That's the journey is part of it. That's what I'm trying to say, man. The journey is part of this whole thing, and you got to relish every square inch of that journey, because along those lines, it builds characters. Those days of losing for me, those days of struggling, those days of never knowing if I was ever going to make this, or seemingly impossible, like being a successful trader at one time looked like climbing Mount Everest in a pair of tennis shoes. To be able to do it, you know, and finally achieve it, and then become very successful, and then give that back to other people, pay it forward, has been a really great thing. And some of you who are starting out, I've talked about this too before, you know, early on it's all about you, but then later on in your life it's also about helping other people. And that's when you really get true wealth, is once you have achieved wealth for yourself, and then you're able to help others. It's just a feeling that you can't explain, that just gives you that fulfilled life. So remember, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't have to be trading. It could be anything in life. It's all about the journey. And throughout this journey of 25 episodes, I mean, it's been crazy. We've talked about some good stuff. We talked about some weird stuff. I've tried some crazy off-the-wall whiskeys. As I said, some have impressed, some have depressed, and some have just been amazing. And I've got probably a couple of grand worth of money down the drain here. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll continue to do this. And, you know, when we get to 50, I'll pile them up here all on the table. So enough of that. I'm going to have a little swig right here. And we're going to talk about the stocks of this week. And then we'll see where that leads us. Okay, well, let's start out again here with the market and take a look at what we've got. And if you remember from 2 weeks ago, I talked about some of the little intricacies in the market that had changed. And one of those was the buying the dip. You know, before the market would rally up early in the morning, or when it did rally up early in the morning, it would hang there. Or any dip that would be in that chart, or any pullback into any kind of moving average, it seemingly just always got picked up and the market would make a new high, or at least hang out towards high. And of course, we have the traditional late day ramp. Now, I made note a couple of weeks ago, we started to see a different tempo. We started to see the market trying to break out in the mornings, then just actually going red, and the late day ramp was gone. So one of the things I mentioned a couple of weeks ago and several times throughout these happy hours is that being around for a long time, one thing I've noticed is that when the market goes through a correction phase, it throws out a couple of signals to you way beforehand. It's what we look for, the little subtle small signals. And one of the things I made note of was how the market internals had been changing, that we're not getting a late day ramp, we're getting late day selling. Now, even though you hadn't seen any impact yet, you started to see different, the way the market was operating, it was different, much different than we have seen in a really long time. So I'm going to look at the daily chart down below to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. The 50 moving average, really since the 27th of March, the 50 moving average has been the holding point for the market. You look back here, even before that on the 22nd, you're going to notice a couple of wicks. This red line, by the way, for all of those watching, this is the 50 moving average on a daily chart. You see it held that up, broke that briefly there on 327, but yet again, the market was able to fight back so many times like it did in the past and build from that. Well, normally this move resulted in at least testing highs in the recent past. We saw moves that would bounce off the 50 moving average, test back into previous highs. It didn't do that. It actually comes back in there around the beginning of the month and tests it again. You can see all through the beginning part of the month here, now, even though we're halfway through the month, for the first few days, you can see all of the wicks down here just pouncing off of that 50. It's just holding onto that 50 for dear life. Now, the difference in this is that each bounce had been sold. Like they couldn't get any traction off the 50 moving average. Drops below that on Wednesday. You can see right here. Drops below that right there on Wednesday. Able to just claw its way back by the skin of its teeth. And then Thursday, it can't hold it. It closes for the first time. And then Friday, it builds on that. So this is the first time when you look back into the charts here. I'm going to open it up for you just a little bit longer. You got to go all the way back to the election, to where you're going to find a time the market was underneath of the 50 moving average. This is about 100 plus trading days, 150, 160 trading days or something. One of the longer spans in recent history where the market has stayed above its 50 moving average. So breaking that is a pretty good signal, a pretty important signal about maybe the change in pace for the market. Now for me, I'm going to look at the lows right here from the 22nd that we talked about, which is about 231.66. I'm going to think the market's going to try to challenge that level early on during the week, the first part of the week. It's going to try to probably challenge that level at some point. And you're going to get a good idea of what it does when it's down there. It's either going to really rally off of that, you're going to see heavy buying coming in there, or you're not going to see very much interest. One of the two things will play out. And I'm sure the first time it taps down towards that, it's going to be bought up. That's just the way things work. But if it gets underneath of that and you see it close under 231, we might start back testing some of the earlier numbers that we saw, 226s at the beginning of the year. We may see something a little more extensive as far as a sell-off. So just some of my market thoughts there. A little bit of change here. We're under the 50 moving average. Could be entering a small bearish cycle here. We'll have to see how it plays out for the remainder of the week. Now, as far as some stocks here, I have to start with AAOI. And I have just been offbeat with AAOI, just to be straight honest with you. I mentioned a few weeks ago, I really thought this was going to be like an ACIA or an NVIDIA. It had every bit of making of that kind of a stock where just, starting at a really low price down here in the 20s, every dip getting bought, blowing out earnings, ripping, just keep going and going and going and going. And I actually bought some in the swing program and sold it on this spike. It was a pretty good trade because at one point I was short and then I was like, well, I'm just going to buy it, because it's going to break out and it's just being one of those stocks. And then it comes up here and then all of a sudden it starts selling off rapidly. And I'm like, wow, it's just coming down. It goes from looking like NVIDIA to looking like SUNY, S-U-N-E, for those that can remember. And it just starts selling and selling and selling. So it's like, I'm just going to start shorting it whenever I get the opportunity. And it just keeps going down and down and down. And it breaks its 50 moving average. And you can see it just goes on a 16-day slide from $60 down to almost 40. Well, they don't have earnings coming out until right here, according to this, on the 4th of May. Well, they release early, and my thoughts behind this was the only reason that they released was to keep their stock from going down. So it's no surprise they get this big rip on Thursday post-market. Let's go up to the top chart here. They get this big rip Thursday post-market, hangs up there, and it's like, okay, I get it. The stock's going down so much. It's down almost $20. That's huge. Good earnings. That's got everybody on board. You could see an epic squeeze. So I'm still thinking when the market opened, this thing could hold and maybe just kind of start building on this and working its way back up. Well, lo and behold, you can see this thing does nothing but sell off the entire day. So my thoughts are now thinking of this stock is like they release earnings early, so the stock will stop going down. They get a brief pop and then everything gets sold off. Every bounce gets sold off. I have no idea what's left in their arsenal to save this thing. It's probably going to continue to slide. Now, I'm not for sure that's going to happen. I'll have to see how the action plays out. But there's going to be a continuation move here. This is either going to save itself at 45, flag, and start building back up. If this thing gets any weaker Monday, it's going to shake everyone out. And I would imagine before the week is over, it will bare minimum test 40 bucks. So some pretty good downside in that one. We'll watch AAOI. On the other side, I'm going to look at ESPR, the mighty ESPR, who may be changing its fortunes here just a little bit. Now, if we go back to this day, they had some pretty good news. This thing bounces off of its 50 moving averages, goes from 20 bucks all the way up to 49. I remember this day going up 75%, just a nutty move. And since then, it's kind of just nestled back down, gotten off of everyone's radar, and just kind of held the 20 moving average. If we open the chart, though, it's quietly trying to build itself back up. You can see this little piece here, the last few days, just building a nice little flag right there. I think if you get back up above this, the highs from the 10th, it's about 39.83, let's say 40. You start working on that. It's building. You can see it's holding that 20 moving average, which is the green line. You just get above there, I think you're going to see a pop on this. Now, the thing about ESPR is it's somewhat cultish, meaning that, people remember that it went up 75% in a day, albeit crazy. That's a dumb move, but it did it. And then it started the next day with a pretty good ramp as well. So this thing's got legs in it. And once it starts breaking technical levels, it's going to hit people's scanners. It's going to break out. They're going to see it. They're going to remember it, and people are going to chase. So there's a good chance if this thing breaks out, you're going to see a pretty strong move off of this pivot. I don't know if it's going to go back to 45s, but you should be able to generate a pretty good cash trade by getting a nice break here on ESPR. So make sure you put this one on your watch list. Now, on the flip side, I've talked about Tesro a couple of times before in the past. Good old Tesro. Now, it is doing everything. It's like a mini AAOI here. It's doing everything it can to cling on to the bottom. You look at this little piece right here, big old sell wick down at 140. Let's say 141's right here. And then it tested that a couple of times, and the last few days it's popped. This one I'm very interested in to see how, you had an overall pretty decent rally in biotech names on Friday. So maybe that continues on. I think if it gets up any more towards these other moving averages, it's probably a short. I can't see this thing gaining long-term traction, but because it's biotech, it can do whatever the hell it wants more than any stock. If that's exactly what it wants to do, then yeah, it might re-rally. Who knows? But I'm more interested in this one as a short. It would just really depend on how the thing trades Monday, Tuesday to see if a pop is shortable or a rally gets stuffed or something like that. Tesro. I like it. It's a good tradable stock. It's got some range in it every day. Just keep it on the radar, seeing how it plays out over the next couple days. And then I think I'm going to wrap this up with Mr. Momo. Momo's living up to its name, Momo, M-O-M-O, of having Momo. Let me type it in there for him. This thing's just on a tear. Just a grinding. It looks like AAOI. Maybe it'll turn out like AAOI now. I mean, since the beginning of the year, 17 to 38. It's just been a beast. And it just keeps grinding up. Even in poor market conditions, it's grinded up. So it's never really been a good short because it hasn't gone extremely parabolic. But one thing I'm noticing is maybe it's a backside trade here relatively soon. You're going to need a couple of more confirmations, for me at least. But something I'm just noticing, you see how it's starting to round at the top. Now, if you go back here and you look through this part of time here, it did the same thing. It broke out, and you got a couple of wicks on these daily charts right here. And it kind of rounds, and then it just pulls down into the moving average and the VWAP here, these other lines I'm watching. So there's a nice little pull once it rounds off at the top. Then it kind of breaks out again, and then just sort of drifts back into that moving average. So it always kind of connects back with the moving average. If you look at the last 3 days, got some wicks right here at the top. See those? Right here? And you're starting to pull just a little bit. I think you've got to get under 37.64 to confirm this move. But you get under 37.64 and most importantly 36.77, you're going to be breaking down some short-term technical barriers. It should trade back down into the 35.50s. Again, not a ton of room, but for a day trade, You get a nice little breakdown, maybe a combination of a weak market. You can get a nice little drift back in there. And if you're really looking at buying the stock, you can wait for it to drift and reconnect with its moving averages and pick it up at a much better price. And maybe it curls back up and pops up over 40. Who knows? Just a stock chart that's been kind of predictable lately. And perhaps it can just generate some pretty good money for all of us as the week progresses. Anyway, guys, again, thank you. Thank you for sticking with me this whole time. This journey itself has been fun. And don't forget, your journey in life, that's what it is about. Savor it. Savor the little things in life. Savor the journey. Enjoy the ride, because that's what most of it's all about. And this is some hella good whiskey. I'm going to finish off the last one. I probably won't drink it again maybe till 50. Maybe we'll bring this one out on 50, then 75, then 100, who knows. But you can see I haven't drank very much of this one at all. Anyway, if you need some help trading, feel free to visit thelincolnlist.com. Take a free trial to our live trade room. Until episode number 26, thanks again, everyone, for sharing this journey and being along this ride with me. I look forward to the next 25 episodes of Happy Hour. As always, if you have topics you'd like for me to discuss, feel free to contact me, support@thelincolnlist.com. Until next time, take care and cheers.